So, welcome to this Friday edition of webinars with TexMac HappyJapan embroidery machines. In this demonstration, we'll show how Applique works with your embroidery machine. So, for the uninitiated, Applique is basically taking a garment where we would normally fill it up with stitches, but in replacing part of that design with a piece of material. And that does a couple of things. Number one, instead of having to fill the whole thing with stitches, you part of that will be occupied and colored in by that material shape, usually a piece of twill. It can be vinyl. And what that does is that, number one, it creates a multimedia effect so that you're having stitches and a piece of material. And that also opens up all kinds of possibilities. Like for an example, we got some fun stuff. So this is kind of a cow pattern or a floral pattern, or you can just do strong colors, but that opens up another creative avenue. You can do glitter vinyl, you can do different textures, you can even do false stitch textures to make it look like stitching. So that's the creative possibilities of that first advantage of applique. And number two is that since you are substituting areas of the stitching for a piece of material, you don't have to fill in those areas. So it doesn't, number one, doesn't take as long to do on the machine to fill in a given area. So you can crank out more pieces per hour. But also it's gentler on the garment because you're also not piercing that as many times with the needle. And then the other advantage is that your customer is so thrilled about this multimedia effect that they'll often pay a little bit more for it. So it makes sense commercially, it makes sense artistically, and gives your customers some options. So without further ado, let's talk about applique and how it starts. So we're going to do a couple of shirts, and then we're going to do some pieces of applique. This is just going to be the word mama. So I know this is a popular thing, and we're just going to sew. We may not sew the whole project. We want to get you the idea, so we'll sew maybe a couple of letters. And we're going to try one with pre-cut shapes. And then we're also going to do one where we don't have a pre-cut shape, but we actually have just a piece of fabric. You don't need a cutter to do it. You actually sew out a running stitch outline that shapes like the M. And then from there, the machine pauses. Then you cut around it and then remove the excess. And then you sew the edges together. Whereas the other technique that we're going to demonstrate is if you have pre-cut shapes, so you have access to somebody who can make the shapes or you have a cutter yourself, then you can have the design first lay down what's called a placement stitch. So it would sew an M, and then the machine will pause, and then you align the M. And if you have somebody set it up right, you'll have some pressure sensitive adhesive or even some iron-on adhesive. But we're going to go ahead and use the spray adhesive to demonstrate that. And then you fix that, align that to the placement stitch, and then hit start. This goes right back into the machine, and it sews down a permanent tack down stitch and even a finishing satin stitch. So two different approaches. Either way, you have your item that you're going to applique, and you have either your material or your pre-cut shapes and some adhesive. So that's basically all you need, and of course some scissors. So what puts this all together is the design. So let's talk about the design. Okay, so what we have here is that word mama. And what I want to show you guys is the pieces. It doesn't matter what software you have. Most embroidery software, you can see this. Whoever your digitizer is can create this pretty easily. So applique shapes or applique designs start first of all with a running stitch to start out with. So this is what's going to sew first. We're going to take this design, it'll sew this, and then after that, the machine will pause automatically. And the way we do that in your Happy machine is then make sure that this placement stitch is a different color for what's going to sew next, which in this case is going to be your tack down stitch, which is this. This is going to sew, which is a light zigzag stitch. So between the green, which sews first the outline, you're going to place the shapes on top of that. Then this light zigzag will sew on top of that to tack that shape onto the garment. And then optionally, if you want to, then you can have a full density satin stitch like this that will then completely cover it up so you don't see an edge. So we'll talk about why you may need that and why you may not need that and the options that you've got. So one thing that's important to see is if you're familiar with this software, at the bottom left, you have a total number of stitches in this design, which is currently 15,000 stitches. So one hint that I'm going to show you is that I'm going to delete this cover stitch real quick, and you're going to see that it's now only 5,000 stitches. So that cover stitch, that full satin, is a full 10,000 stitches, which adds to this particular design about 10 and a half, 12 minutes to the sew out. So let's go ahead and we're going to put this onto a USB stick, and then let's watch this sew out so we can see how this works. I've saved that to my USB stick here. And then we're going to take this to a machine, and we're going to use our 7-needle machine. So that's going to fit in our 12 by 12 hoop. So we'll put this into the USB stick and zoom up close to this so you can see the screen. So we'll read from the USB stick, and it's called the Mama Applique Design. So that should pop up. There we go, Mama Applique Design. So you can see on the screen that I had on my software. Now let's pick a hoop that will fit this. So I'm going to change my hoop, and that looks like that just fits, which is perfect. So we can see that that fits within my allowable area. So now what we'll do is the first thing I'm going to do is the cut it out yourself technique. So here's the first color that sews, which is that running stitch. So we're going to sew out the M, then we're going to sew the A in one way. So first we'll sew the running stitch, and we want to get it to pause. So I'm just kind of thinking about the colors. I've got a red here, so I'm just going to use red. And then to make it pause, tell it to stop. You have a stop button here, or even a frame out button. I'll do that. And not only, you can see here that it adds a little frame there. That means it'll sew that color, stop, and wait for you. And then if you want to cut it yourself, then the next thing that it wants to sew is where it's going to sew this outline, which is our placement stitch. We'll place that shape on there. And then we're going to sew another tack down stitch that's going to hold that in place. So I'm going to I'll make that red also. And then I want it to stop just in case. So this is how we are going to get it to stop and pause. It's basically you just make each section a different color, and the machine lets you stop it between the colors automatically if you wanted to. All right, so we're all set up here. Let's go ahead and hoop this up, and then we'll watch this run on a shirt. Make sure that's locked in, and let's go and start sewing. So I'm going to trace real quick. While we're doing that, I'll check, make sure my red is set to go. I did check my bottom on this, so everything worked on. On the face, that looks like that fits nicely. Okay, and now you're about to see the frame out movement when it says this last triangle on the A. So with that frame out command, you'll see it'll kick it out towards me. See that? Makes it really easy to place the shape.
I have a question.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, when you did the outline stitch for every letter, right? I mean the run stitch for every letter. Now, in the software, is that how you have it in the software, or you have it go everything with each letter, then go to the next letter, and then it will do everything for that letter, then go to the next letter? How do you have it set up? You have it set whereas the first 4 stitches is the outline for all of them?
Right. This is actually set up to do the whole thing at once. So I could have made it so it paused between each letter. but I just wanted to show how quickly that outline stitch sews out for the whole thing. So, but yeah, I
But
could have made a pause between each letter in
yeah,
case.
I seen that file before, and
Mhm.
usually like the letter M, the first
Right.
four
It's a
stitches, that's for the letter M. That's a run stitch to tack down, then the
right.
you know, and then another run or tack down, and then the satin stitch at the last stitch.
Right.
So
Exactly.
the way it looks like it just went straight through and did the run stitch for every letter. So it's like
Right.
the first score was that file was set to do the outline, the run stitch for every letter first. That's how it was set.
You're basically having to pause and go back to every one, and then so then you would do the applique for this, then jump forward to the next point for the A. If I'm reading you right.
Right.
But I think that's going to be set up in the, you can make in any order, but you would do it in the software. So let's say that I wanted to do just the M and finish it up, which I kind of want to break this up so we don't have to sew out two whole designs and make the webinar go a lot longer. So we can sew just basically just do these two letters in two different techniques. That way we can see that more clearly. And so this is not set up for that. You are right. But if I could, if in the digitizing, I would do the M. If I was going to do it that way and really set it up for the way I'm demoing now, I'm going to do the running stitch for the M, then not do the rest of this, but then the running stitch for the M again for what we're about to do now, and then the tack down stitch for the M and possibly the satin before I go on to do the rest of the letters. And that's really easy to do in the software. You don't even have to have the Wilcom software. As long as you have a basic editing software, you can make that all go in whatever order you want. And there is a way, there is some are good reasons to do it the way you're talking about. Because if you have a really shifty material that's not that's moving around, that maybe the next letter won't line up with the previous, then it's probably a good idea to finish one area completely, especially if you're doing maybe different kinds of material on each. In this case, what we would do is, Teresa did this design. So the way this is set up is that I would next do all of the letters at once. Ideally, to make it even faster, instead of spraying them down, she did this with an adhesive on the reverse side, so I can line these all up. And then you take a press cloth or even just a piece of cutaway backing, line that up, put the backing on, and then press it for a few seconds. That will make that hold nicely. And then this happens very fast. Then you let it up and then go ahead and sew your zigzag stitch. So that's how you could do it all at once. But the way you're suggesting definitely has its advantages if you need to do them individually, which is what we're doing here for demonstration purposes. We'll just do the M and then the A so that you can see the two different techniques side by side. All right, so I'm going to go ahead now. I know that it's going to sew the M. So I'm going to go ahead and lay this on here and just hit start. And because we did a frame out, then I can just hit start and it'll go right back to where it was. Totally unrehearsed. So you're seeing that now it's going to go right to that M and sew it out. And this is one way to do it if you don't have a cutter. So that's gonna try and set the rest, but I'll go ahead and artificially stop that because we're just going to try and do one technique at a time. So we're gonna sew, this is now lined up perfectly. You can see that lined up perfectly with that M. So I'm gonna hand cut this real quick. So we want to do our best to cut that as close as we can. So, and of course, if you can hand cut this with your scissors, that's even better. But the difficulty I'm running into right now is that I'm going to have a hard time getting into this little jag right here to get this little tab. So I'm not going to struggle through this and make the and make this webinar unnecessarily long, but I'm using all this also to illustrate a point that if you have any complex shape like this, you're going to struggle a little bit to really cut this out enough that it won't show when you finally do your cover stitch. So, so I'm just going to leave this at this and pretend that I took the extra time to cut completely around this M. I'll cut a little bit more, but what you're seeing is that if you don't have a pre-cut shape, you do have to take a little extra time and cut this. But we'll then start the finishing cover stitch so you can see how that works. Okay, so now it's going to start sewing the tack down stitch for the M. So, and now it's going to sew the full density zigzag stitch or a satin stitch. All right, now bear in mind, you can see with a full density satin stitch, it takes a lot longer to sew than the zigzag stitches because you've got that many more stitches. So it's great for the effect if you want a full density satin stitch. The advantage of this is you don't need a cutter. You just need a sheet of fabric. And as long as you're willing to take the time to cut around the edges, then you can do it this way without any additional piece of equipment. Anybody have any questions while you're watching this sew out? It'll take a couple more minutes.
What kind of stabilizer did you use?
I used a 2-ounce cutaway.
Okay.
So great question. I'm still using a cutaway stabilizer. You could probably use a light cutaway just because this lays out so nice and flat and it's not very stitch intensive. So that's another advantage of the applique is you're not laying down a lot of stitches, so you can get away with a lighter cutaway backing. I would even do a mesh cutaway, which is even softer against the skin, especially this is a t-shirt. So that's a great question. I'm glad you asked that.
Is there a setting to make it a full density setting?
That's just in the digitizing.
How it has to be.
Yeah. So you can just set the density to, in Wilcom, probably 4.0 or 3.6. Okay, so that's done. Okay, so you kind of see how that works is, and it sews out really nicely. As long as your digitizer knows what they're doing, just good basic settings. But so took a little bit of time. So let's try the alternate. We are going to do the A here. We've got the placement stitch. So now we're going to do the A. We're going to use some spray adhesive. So let's take a look at the A. Take our A. Just lay down again with, you want to use a quality spray like this. The cheaper sprays really spray unevenly. This lets you do just a light coating. So I'm going to do a test spray real quick. And that's really all you need. Wait a few seconds. Let that set up for about 15-20 seconds. And this is now nice and tacky. So line this up as precisely as you can. Don't be afraid to take it out off the machine. All right, so get it as exact as you can. That's pretty exact. So that's lined up, a little bit of adhesive. Don't do a lot because remember your needles are going through this. So when the needle goes through this, it picks up that adhesive and eventually it will gum up your needles and your rotary hook. So you want to minimize the amount that you need to fix that in place. Okay, so that's ready to go. The only thing here, let's find the zigzag section, which I believe is 3. Okay, so now we're at the start of 3, and now I've got to move over to the A. So I'm gonna move forward. So it's going back to the A. It'll start at the M, of course. So wait till we're through the M. I can even skip forward by 100 stitches. So we're over on the A. Looks like we're almost there. Yep, we're there. Okay, so there we go. We're right on the A. Let's sew it out, see how it looks. Do the triangle. Okay. All right, I'm going to stop that right there, cut the thread, and compare these two techniques. So on the one hand, you're hand cutting, and I don't want to put down the hand cutting technique. You're just skipping the step of actually going through and just cutting that closer to the edge. And the disadvantage is you're hand cutting, and you need a full density satin to cover over the roughness of the cut so that it looks nice and smooth. So, but for that, you don't need to spend on a cutter. If you now, if you can hand cut this material cleanly with some good hand cutting tools, then you still don't need a cutter. But if you can imagine hundreds of shapes, you know, that's a great problem to have because you get popular because you're doing your applique. Then that's when you really want to invest in a cutter. And here's the advantage of having a cutter. This is so clean that often people are just happy with a zigzag stitch like this, and it's finished very nicely. You have very clean edges, and if we wanted to, we can do this with the finished satin like the M here, but we don't have to. And obviously, this ran a lot faster than running the full satin on the M. So those are the advantages of having a cutter. But an important thing is that with your HappyJapan embroidery machine, to actually fix the applique on here and sew it out, it's nothing special. You're just setting up, telling it where to stop, and the digitizer will do all the rest by setting up the design the way it was set up. So that's our applique demonstration for today with the two different techniques. So I hope you've enjoyed this. I'll take any questions you guys might have.